I'm one of the oldest people at this company who's not in like a director, senior director, VP or above level.
You're so young, You don't have enough experience, and then you're just looked at like you're old. There is no perfect place to be, right?
There's absolutely no right age to be a woman, and there's research that's backed that up.
That is so true. The number of people that reach out, I'm always very honest with them. Welcome back to I Can Fit That In, the show where ambition meets alignment. Today, I am joined by Maureen Clough, a former tech executive who made the courageous decision to step away from corporate life and tell the truth about what she experienced there. She is the creator of It Gets Late Early, a podcast, newsletter, and platform exploring the hidden cost of ageism and what it really means to evolve, stay relevant, and lead across every stage of a career. Maureen's work has reached over 100 million views and sparked a broader conversation about experience, reinvention, and the value of perspective. Maureen, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me, Erin. This is going to be really fun.
Yeah, you are welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. So you have described yourself as a corporate dropout turned truth teller. And that's not everybody's, path because, there's leaving corporate and then there's the dropout piece.
Right.
And then there's the truth telling piece. So I would love to dive into that, just in general, get us going on your story from, what was that moment or accumulation of moments, honestly, that made you realize that you could no longer stay silent about your experience?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many different moments, but the culmination of events was really, I kept on seeing the same patterns emerge at each company I was a part of. And I was like, am I going to keep doing this? Am I just going to keep on marching down this path simply because I've done it? And I kept on sort of shiny object going for the next achievement and climbing up that corporate ladder. I'm an elder millennial. I'm an eldest daughter, very on brand, like just kept on trying to achieve. And then I suddenly kind of woke up one day and I looked around and I was like, do I even like this? Am I doing what fills me up? And I realized that the answer kind of was no. I enjoyed it because of the people and because I was good at it. But I realized that that wasn't going to be enough for me. And then more important than anything else, I saw that there was this gray ceiling because people in tech, especially and in corporate as well, I mean, you age out of the industry. You do. It's a very prevalent thing that for some reason nobody was talking about, even though it literally impacts everybody who is fortunate enough to get older, right? And so I was called a dinosaur at my tech job at age 37. It was a joke. It was my younger colleague, but I was like, oh my holy wow, he's actually kind of right. How am I one of the oldest people at this company who's not in like a director, senior director, VP or above level? Where do all of these people go? And it turns out everybody's been worried about it and no one's been talking about ageism. And it's a massive problem, especially with the aging population that we have, and contributes to a loss of like $850 billion in potential GDP that we could have every single year. And that's researched by AARP. So it's just been something that I realize I'm really passionate about because I don't want my kids growing up in a world where they're told that they matter less with every breath they take. It's ridiculous. And we need to put an end to it. So, and all the other isms while we're at
it. There are lots of those.
There are a lot of them. So yeah, we got to work that for us.
Right. So why do you think it is such a unspoken reality, especially in industries like tech that really claim to value like being innovative? I find that very like that dichotomy is very interesting.
Well, I think we equate innovation with youth. It's cool. It's, the coolest, newest thing on the block. You think of the people who come out of university and how they're the fresh blood. And people assume that it's only going to be done by people who wear a hoodie and are coding in the basement of their parents' house or something like that, or in a garage. And that's not true. I mean, actually, the best innovators and the most impressive companies have been shown by Harvard Business Review to actually be built by people who are on an average 45 years old. So that whole like youth equation, it's a myth, and people just don't know that. And it's very pervasive in the tech industry. It's something that it's incredibly fallacious, and it's super hurtful for everybody who's in that industry because they build the tech that we all use every day and then they get discarded. Part of that is cost cutting initiatives. Salaries tend to equate, to the number of years you've worked and all of that, which is a problem as well because we don't really register that the institutional knowledge that these people hold has incredible power, and the cost of replacement is massive as well. So it's a really huge issue in the industry, and it's one that I think people don't want to talk about because it's technically illegal to discriminate against anyone who's over the age of 40. And that's been the case since 1967. And yet it's rampant. It happens constantly. It's accepted. It's basically the last socially acceptable form of discrimination. Ageist jokes, no problem. You know, if you sub the term woman in for old guy or something, you cannot say the same things in our culture. It's really interesting.
Right.
And we're all
is
ageist. We are, and it's not our fault. It's been inculcated in us basically since birth that we should all worship at the fountain of youth. And kids as young as age 4 are known to spout off harmful stereotypes about age. So we start them young. That happens in media, it happens in society and in culture. And so it's ingrained in all of us. And I'm actively trying to take it out of me. It is something that is really hard, and it's systemically reinforced. Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially for women. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, definitely. I have been called old many times by my children. So
yeah, me too. And I'm like, who taught you this?
Told me that I lived in the 1800s, and I'm like, no, that's actually that's not a fact.
That's amazing.
Not in this lifetime, amazing. Bro. Yeah. Oh, it's too funny. Yeah. So, bruh. What do you think? Well, actually, this is actually a question that I feel like is almost on the other side of ageism, but I experienced this so much when I was in corporate in general. But people would look at me as if I was so young.
Yep.
And, you know, upper 20s, early to mid 30s. And a lot of the comments from people older than me were kind of some of those backhanded comments. And it was typically woman to woman, which was very annoying, but it was. Disappointing. But it's typically women being like, oh, I've got years on you, or, oh, you're just a baby. And I always found that so annoying. And I was trying to make myself seem so much older than I was. So if I was 33 going on 34, I'd be like, oh, I'm 34, you know, because I just wanted to not have to deal with that. But there's no fine line, because then eventually you get to 40, or at this point, you know, I'm 44. You get to these points where people no longer look at you like you're so young, you don't have enough experience. And then you're just looked at like you're old. There's no fine. There's like no like perfect place to be. Right.
Exactly. Especially for women, crazy. There's absolutely no right age to be a woman. And there's research that's backed that up. Actually, it was published in the Harvard Business Review. Yeah. And it was a survey of over 900 women. And everybody found that you're either too young, quote unquote, or too old to lead, right? You're irrelevant, you're a has-been, et cetera, or you're just a know-nothing moron up and comer trying to like get up the ladder really quickly. It's really an impossible position for women. And it's just, that's something we have to deal with on top of everything else. But I'm really glad you brought this up, because as I learned in my research and doing this podcast for the last 2.5 years, I realized something that I had not expected, which is that ageism can actually go both ways, and it can go against the young. It is not federally protected to be ageist against young people is actually totally okay in our federal law, not on some state laws. But I didn't realize that some of the things that I had experienced in my corporate career were in fact ageism just directed at me as a young person. And I realized that I felt this need to be, you know, taken seriously, and I would dress the part, right? I would try and make myself look older and assume a position of authority, because people would just look at you as though, you know, you couldn't possibly know what you're talking about, right? You're too young to know what you're talking about. And that's super damaging. And so young leaders absolutely have it bad as well. It's something that I think we really need to change. And truly the power of the best organizations is found in those that actually have intergenerational collaboration. And they don't just have people of different generations. They actually intentionally make sure that there is collaboration happening on a real level. There's actual communication, there's respect, and there's mentoring that goes both ways, by the way, because I learned just as much from people who are younger than I am as I do from people who are older. Yeah. And that's something that I think we've really lost sight of, and is hugely detrimental. And especially Gen Z, gosh, they need it so badly. I mean, they've had the professional workforce just like obliterated since the pandemic. And now they have to contend with the entry level roles being flooded with, you know, older applicants who have experience. And, you know, entry level roles are now 3 to 5 years. Like, what do you do if you're new to the game? So there's a huge amount of stuff that's in their path. And my heart really breaks for them.
Absolutely. What would you say is something that, let's say there's a leader, male or female, listening to this podcast right now, and they're experiencing that? right? That they feel like they're kind of treated like the dinosaur. Like what is something that they can start to implement or talk about to bring some awareness to this in their organizations?
I think it's really hard because, especially unfortunately, if you're a woman, if you talk about this sort of thing, I feel like people discount you and they think of you as a
Yeah.
whiny nag or something like that. And I do think it hits harder for women in this regard. Absolutely. So I think it is challenging. It was one of the reasons I thought I got to start this conversation, because at that time I still felt like I'm young enough that people might, not discount me, which is so sad to say, but it just underscores exactly how ageist our society is, right? But it is challenging. And I think if I were to advise leaders right now, I would say essentially you should couch this in terms about business value and the generation of business value. Because let's face it, corporate's not doing anything unless it generates more business value. And we can stop pretending otherwise. So the reality is companies that actually employ people of different generations and get them to work together, they do have better innovation and they have more productive teams. And there's been research to back that up. So couching it in those terms is really important, and phrasing it in such a way where you're not talking about what you've done wrong necessarily. Like ageism is a scary word. It is illegal, right? Like it sends alarm bells off in the general counsel's office, most likely, right? But if you talk about facilitating intergenerational representation across an organization and why that matters, now we're talking. And so I think that's an important reframe. It can also be incorporated in, internal trainings with HR and with hiring managers, because there's a desperate need for that education. In fact, there was a Resume Now survey that was done last year that said that 42% of hiring managers admitted that they were ageist against both younger candidates and older candidates alike. So it's a huge problem in the workforce, and we should be measuring people for what they can actually add to the organization rather than having these snap judgments. Now, humans are fallible creatures. We all come to the office with our own shitty selves, right? So you can have the most ironclad policy at your organization, and it's not going to stop ageism. It's going to happen. And so I also want people who are feeling like they might be facing it, whether in their current job or in the job search. Yeah, you probably are. And I honestly don't think that's ever going to go away, because the truth is we have a society that is aware of our own mortality. And when you see signs of it creeping across your face, you're going to fight it, right? And so you're going to have this undue value placed on youth, right? And so that's never really leaving.
Yeah.
But the point is, don't let it stop you, right? Like start to draw strength from the experience that you have and the years that you have under your belt, and trust yourself more, because you've done a lot of cool stuff in the past and you can help an organization, right? And so just kind of reframing the way you think of age in your own mind is really critical. And again, you're going to have to do a lot of rewiring in that brain. I mean, how many over the hill cards have you seen, right? If you turn 40, you're old, right? Like how many people are joking on social media about being, quote, old when they're barely 30. It's a joke. So it's going to be a hard thing to do, but you have to start to reframe age as a liability and start thinking of it as an asset. And it truly is. The crystallized knowledge that you gain over time as an older worker is massively impactful.
Yeah.
And organizations, they need to understand the value of the older workforce, which is massive. And they have, for example, the fallacy that if you are a younger worker, you are more likely to have more time at the organization. And every company wants to hire for tenured people. And so the fact is, if you are an older worker, you are going to stay longer than a younger worker. That is factual. And people get that all twisted.
Yeah, I bet they do. Right. But to really start to value your own experience in the process is so important, right? Because if you fall into those societal, ways of being, or those societal norms of how we talk about age in the workplace, especially, then you're just one of many in that sense, right? And you're not actually valuing your own experience. You're just falling prey to the way that people talk about it. So, such an interesting subject, and I love the work that you're doing around this. Let's talk a little bit about how you left your traditional career path, and you've shared with us, the reasons and kind of why. But leaving a corporate role or a career path that maybe seemed at some point just very, linear, right? Very lined out for you. It can bring freedom to leave. It can also bring uncertainty. So how did you navigate that identity shift that came along with stepping away from your, corporate job?
Erin, it wasn't supposed to go like this. I'll tell you that. This was supposed to be my side hustle. And within a month of having launched the podcast, which by the way, when you do that, that's pretty public. And if you want it to do well, you also have to tell, like LinkedIn, which means your current company and your boss, et cetera, they're going to see that you're doing it. So I knew that there was a distinct risk for me actually to go and do a podcast about ageism in the industry in which I worked at a company that probably had like 2 people over the age of 40 across their entire company. So I knew there was a chance that it would not be met with a lot of enthusiasm. I was let go a month later, a layoff of 1. I had never had a review. Didn't even have goals set yet. It was a joke. So it was very clearly, very clearly related. But, again, I realized this situation is going to be something that I'm going to continue to bump up against. I turned 40 and I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. The second I turned 40, all the inbound solicitations from recruiters fell off a cliff. So I knew this is something that is going to continue to plague me. And I can keep on going down this path knowing it's not the one that is necessarily right for me and knowing that I might reach a limit at some point. And often older workers are the very ones who are laid off in these mass rifts, or they are, put on a return to office mandate, which by design is harder for an older employee. Companies know this. They want to cut your salary. So I just thought, I'm going to go all in on this. And so that's exactly what I've done since then. So yeah, no path, no understanding exactly how it would all come together. Just sort of writing on the fact that I knew it was resonant material. People would reach out to me continuously telling me how grateful they were for my voice. And I was finally free to say whatever I wanted to say without the corporate muzzle. And that was really gratifying to feel like I was doing something that was actually making the world a better place versus like the way people in tech say it is when they're just like a SaaS company. So that was really nice because I'm a people person and an empath through and through. So this sort of thing really resonates with me. And I actually used to work in broadcast journalism too. And this is, the creator economy, journalism sort of adjacent, if you will. And so it's been a much better fit for me, much better fit. And I won't say it's been easy.
Well, thanks for sharing that story.
Of course.
Yeah. Right. I was going to ask also, like, what helped you trust yourself enough to start to build something new? But you shared with us that you didn't really start to trust yourself. You just knew what you had was an intuition about something that you needed to share. And, that's where I think we do build really meaningful, whether it's companies, platforms, you name it. That's where the meaning comes in, because when you're sharing something so authentic and so real for you, it is most likely very real for other people.
Exactly.
And it's when we don't share those things that we're not fully bringing our whole self to the table.
Right.
And we either do ourselves a disservice or humanity a disservice or both. Right. So good for you for actually saying, I don't know where this is going to go, but I feel like I'm onto something here and I need to share it. So it's not easy. Not easy.
It wasn't. But the thing that I had in my back pocket was the self-belief, because I had been through a lot of different hard things in the past. I had gotten new jobs in completely new industries, and I've figured it out every time. And so I knew whatever happens, I will figure it out. And not only that, what I was doing was actually making a foray into what they call the creator economy. As a podcaster, as a content creator, as a speaker, all of that, that's the creator economy. So I knew even if this whole thing crashed and burned like horribly, I would have experience as a creator in the creator economy, which would thereby make me extremely valuable to any companies in that ecosystem. And so I was like, you know what? Even if this thing tanks, we'll figure it out. And so that's another benefit of having, the wisdom of some years and some failures behind you, is you're going to figure it out. So that really propelled me.
So true. Yeah. No, I mean, it's such a great point, right? If you don't fail in something along the way, then you're not growing. So you need those little failures in order to learn more about yourself and honestly, to just redirect, because there is no linear path anymore, right?
No, not at all.
So when you look back at your time, there's not. No. When you look back at your time in your, corporate roles, what did you find the most draining, and what do you do differently now in order to either protect your energy or to just not get as depleted?
What didn't I feel draining about corporate is probably the better question. I think, that so much was out of your control was really difficult for me. You could have the best boss in the world and then they'd get a job somewhere else. And suddenly that promotion that you were promised is gone. And now you have to prove yourself to a new person. Sometimes that new person hates you. Like that happens. And so a lot of what I realized that corporate was just a game of chance. And a lot of the people that I saw around me maybe knew the right people or, played the game really well. And, hats off to them. I should have done it better, I guess. But you'd see people get these jobs and you're like, him? Her? Are you serious right now? And I was like, this is so frustrating. And then, realizing that in my case, the world in which I had inhabited was partnerships. And partnerships are more of a long-term strategy than a coin-operated machine. And unfortunately, a lot of CEOs do not understand that, particularly in the startup world. And so there was a lot of education and expectation setting and all of that. And it seemed almost inevitably to go sideways. So, you'd have this great long conversation, this dance during the interview process. I want to make sure it's a good fit for you. I want to make sure it's right fit for me. This is what I see, blah, blah, blah. And they come to you because you have the experience. But then you get in there and all the things you discussed during the interview process are thrown out the window. Suddenly your goals are 3x and the results that they expect for you are truly impossible if you have a brain and have any experience. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So getting set up to fail from the beginning over and over, just things that are kind of out of your control. And I realized there were some things that I could have done over the course of time to prevent finding myself in that situation. Some certain ways I could go about the interviews, certain things I could ensure happened during that process. But of course, I had to learn through the very painful process of going through all that. And I just realized I didn't want everything to be in someone else's hands that way. And the fact is, there is no corporate loyalty for the most part. Sure, some people will build long, great careers in corporate and good for them, but it's not the norm. And in fact, layoffs and jumping from company to company and being part of acquisitions that result in more uncertainty and whatnot. If you're in the SaaS space, your company is going to get acquired by private equity or an upmarket competitor or some venture firm or something like that at some point. And it means a lot of upheaval for you. And so it wasn't offering me the stability that I had been sold as what I would achieve if I kept climbing the career ladder. So that whole sort of social contract between employer and employee has been steadily eroding for a long time. And I saw it happening and I was like, is this all there is? Gosh, there's got to be something else. And the something else has a lot of great stuff about it and has a lot of bad stuff about it too. So I don't want to glorify entrepreneurship. It is hard. It is really, really hard. I'm learning as I go and you can't do everything alone. That's the other thing. And it takes time and money to build something. And so I really want to call that out because it is a privilege to be able to do something like this. And I don't take it for granted. And so it's something that, a lot of people, one great thing for older workers, sadly, a lot of us are going to be forced into involuntary entrepreneurship by virtue of these mass layoffs and what have you. But what you do have typically, hopefully, is a little bit of a cushion from having been in the game for a while that you can hopefully then draw on to put yourself out there and build something new. And one other fun thing about getting older is for some reason, you're not valued inside organizations, but you're highly sought after and valued outside of them as a consultant. So that is a path that people can take is going into consulting. But again, there are pros and cons to absolutely everything. And being your own boss has its drawbacks for sure as well. So
that is so true. The number of people that reach out to me wanting to know how I've built my business and, they want advice on something that they want to start. And, I'm always very honest with them when I talk to people about this and I tell them how hard it is, but I also tell them, in my corporate career, I was a business developer and revenue generator for corporations. Like that was my job was to know people. It was to build relationships. And so I still do the same thing. Every day is business development for me, every single day. Right. And it never stops. And people who all of a sudden go, oh, I want to start this thing, but have never done that, business development, revenue generating, et cetera, never been a producer. It's a really hard transition to make because they don't understand running the business and building the business is actually about bringing people through the door, right? They're just like, oh, I've got this
Absolutely.
thing to sell. It's like, it's so hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now a lot of these people are going to have to hang a shingle for the first time in their lives. And they could be as far from a salesperson as you could possibly imagine, or a marketer, right? And now kind of everybody who's getting into this world kind of has to be a salesperson. And there's a lot of, I think there's actually a great gap there that needs to be filled by someone coming in to teach people who, say they've been in software engineering, for example, and now they need to go out as a consultant, how to market themselves, because that's where we're going. And it's, we're increasingly seeing the advent of portfolio careers. I think it was 40% of people who were in this recent poll already had jobs outside of their corporate environment. So this is happening. It's not really a side hustle anymore. It's kind of like moving towards main dish. And it's because we can't rely on the stability of a corporate career in the way in which the last generation was able to.
That's true.
It's sad, but with it comes some opportunity. I try to focus on that more than the sadness, but I do worry about how it's going to fray the fabric of society and the impact it's going to have on children to have less stability in the incomes of their parents who are trying to provide for them. It really is heartbreaking, but I think people would be well advised to actually see the forest through the trees here and recognize that this shift is already upon us. And it's imperative that you start to make inroads into figuring your way out of it, because sooner than later, you're very likely to join the group of people who need to have these disparate income sources in order to provide for themselves. So I look at what I'm doing, and I think I'm just kind of on the earlier wave of that by virtue of doing what I do. So I'm also, that was weird. Something just popped, something just told me it was 11:45. Weird. Anyway, don't know what that was, but it's, this is something that I think a lot of people are going to join, whether they want to or not soon. So I feel a little bit of good fortune for being out, I guess, a little bit early. Hopefully I can tell people what to and what not to do, because I certainly made a lot of mistakes along the way. Because like you said, it's really hard. And, people do glorify it. And there's a lot that's just extremely challenging. But I will say,
I think you'll never work harder in your life as an entrepreneur.
Exactly. No, it's so true. You're always thinking about it. And I have to, kind of like slap myself to stop working or thinking and ideating. You can get so wrapped up in it, but it's also been tremendously awesome in a lot of ways too.
Yes, I hear you. Maureen, before my last question for you, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your newsletter and how people can learn more about your show, your newsletter, your platform, and where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to itgetslateearly.com, and that's where you can sign up for my newsletter. My newsletter comes out fairly sporadically, I would say at this point. That's something I'm trying to change and be a little bit more consistent. But my show comes out about 3 times a month. It's mostly a YouTube focused show, but it's focused all on the issues that we're facing as mid-career and late career workers in this future of work, and a lot of quiet part out loud about the systems and the power that are influencing the world today and how we work. It's been an absolute blast to be there and to do this work. And I've also got a ton of different interviews with people, experts, academics, authors. It's been so much fun. And so, I'd love for people to come check it out. I'd love to have you in the fray, and let me know what you'd like to see more of.
Awesome. So last question. In this chapter of your life, what do you want people to know about what it really means to fit in what matters most?
I mean, I'm still trying to teach myself this lesson because I'm a shiny object syndrome kind of gal. It's just who I am. Squirrel, that's me. That's who I am. But I've realized I do need to accept my limitations. I do need to accept that I cannot focus on everything. In fact, that's like the opposite of focus. And that there are times and seasons for basically prioritizing one area of your life versus others, and that it's okay to shift between them, and just to give myself as much grace as I possibly can. Basically treat myself how I would treat a friend. Like, that's a really clutch move, is to actually talk to yourself the way you talk to your friends instead of hating on yourself. And that's something I really wish I'd learned earlier in life. Man, it would have helped me so much. But I'm still kind of sorting that out. I don't really have a good ritual or system or anything yet, but I am working on it, and it's going to be part of this season of my life.
I love that. Well, I know a good book if you want any help with it.
Yahoo! I know you do. Awesome.
Okay. And then real quick, where can people find you?
You can find me on all the social media channels. I'm Maureen W. Clough at LinkedIn, at Instagram, at TikTok, and then itgetslateearly.com is my main website. But yeah,
Perfect.
come check it out. Would love to have you.
Perfect. Okay. And we'll include all of that in the show notes. Maureen, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
You're welcome. Everyone, you know what to do. Please like, share, subscribe, and get this into the hands of more and more people who will not only benefit from the messages, but also have a lot of fun listening to the authentic conversations that we have here. Until next time, be well.